There's a moment most people can recognize. Something small has been irritating you for weeks, maybe even months. It's not big enough to explode as such. It's just enough to sit there. And then a moment arrives. Suddenly, the opening appears in a conversation. The one where you can finally say it. Because you feel it in your chest. The sentence is already there. And then something happens. You find yourself softening it or making a joke of it, or you find yourself explaining around it, or worse still, you say nothing at all, and then the moment passes. You see, there's a moment when you know the conversation is waiting. That feeling in your stomach, knowing that the conversation needs to happen. Knowing that conversation is going to be very awkward. And whilst you're in that conversation, it feels like the room shifts beneath you. You already know the sentence you need to say. But there's another version of that moment. The version where you delay. You begin to tell yourself, this can wait. I can talk tomorrow about this, or maybe next week. Yeah, there's better timing, of course. Because nobody's actually forcing this conversation. And of those two versions, one feels sharp and immediate, and the other one feels calm for now. And most of the time, this doesn't look so dramatic. You start to write a message. You read it and you think, I could soften that sentence just a little bit. You reread it again, thinking it sounds, oh no, this sounds too strong. Maybe it's a little bit harsh. Maybe I should just say it just a little bit differently. And by the time you send it, it doesn't really say what you meant. And sometimes you don't even send it at all. You begin to close the message and you convince yourself, I'll bring this up later when the timing's better. Nothing explodes. Meetings where you hold something back. Conversations where you soften to the point that it doesn't really mean what you originally thought or wanted to say. But you're keeping the room calm. And from the outside, it looks like stability. It looks like maturity. And by the time you say it, it doesn't really say what you meant. And the strange thing is, it works. Your first thing is relief. It's like you were on the edge of something and you pulled back from the abyss. Because you don't have to deal with the reaction or anyone pushing back against what you said. And the room stays calm. And you can say things like, well, nobody thanks you for saying the hard things. Everyone appreciates the calm. So it feels like you made the mature choice. And that's why this pattern actually survives, because the reward is instant. There are only really two kinds of discomfort here. The first is clean pain, and that involves you saying the thing. But when you say that thing, the room does shift, and you have to deal with a very awkward moment, and in most cases a lot of tension. It stings, but it ends. And the second pain is the dirty pain. And that involves you not saying it or softening what you wanted to say, allowing the conversation to carry forward to the next meeting, to next week, to the next decision. And that doesn't sting. It just sits there. It follows you. And when you contrast them to very different moments, the first stings, but it ends. And the other one doesn't sting. It just sits there. And I tell you this because I've done this so many times. I've left things half said. And I've convinced myself I'll circle back on that. And I've managed to convince myself it's patience. And after a while, I noticed something. Not so long after them moments, I'd be shorter with people. I'd be less clear with them. Irritation began appearing elsewhere. In the small moments of someone doing something that shouldn't have really bothered me, but it did because that original moment never closed. At some point, you notice something simple. You didn't avoid pain. You moved it. And now it's bigger. Not louder, just heavier. Because you didn't avoid pain. You just pushed it forward. And once you see that pattern clearly, if saying it today would be uncomfortable, but not saying it quietly changes who you become over time, what are you actually protecting?